Hey everyone, I'm going to be discussing two texts today, the fourth chapter of Professor Bush's book, Making Sense, Nonsense, and No Sense of Rules, and Peggy McIntosh's essay, White Privilege and Male Privilege. At their core, both of these texts speak to the unwritten rules that hegemonic structures have established in order to determine how people of different races in the U.S. can and cannot interact, and the rhetoric that is used in order to justify these interactions or lack thereof. The purpose of this video is to explore three ways in which people in the United States explain the segregation they observe and are blinded to the structural nature of these unwritten rules. The three most common explanations people use involved the notion of human nature, color blindness, and white privilege as a natural, invisible occurrence. For some quick context on Professor Bush's chapter, testimonies were collected from a range of students and faculty of different ethnicities and races from Brooklyn College about their experiences navigating various social interactions. What Professor Bush found was that, although these aforementioned interactions often had an aspect of diversity to them, either because the student being interviewed was in an interracial relationship, had a multiracial group of classmates, or came from a multiracial community, segregation still regulated these relationships in one major way or another. Case in point, according to a student survey performed at Brooklyn College by the University of California in 2009, 62.9% of students socialize with people of races different from their own outside of class either daily or weekly. However, when it came to entering the home of someone of another race, 60.2 students stated that they either occasionally or never do so. When students at Brooklyn College were made aware of these numbers, some of them were startled and cited the diversity of New York City as a reason for their shock that home-based interaction was still so segregated. However, in rationalizing this segregation, several students invoked human nature. Jenna, a white student, stated, "I know in school you socialize and learn about different cultures, but when you need a friendship really means a lot. You really have to have a lot in common with a person to be friends with them." Several students who were interviewed echoed Jenna's sentiments and, moreover, suggested that, in order to form intimate relationships of any kind, the person you reach out to must be one of your own. However, few of these assertions seem to take into account the way segregation was built into the foundation of the country, with slavery producing a long legacy of policies and ideologies that discourage integration. From federal housing policies that barred Black Americans from buying real estate in suburbs as recently as the 1960s, to school districts being disproportionately funded based on the race and socioeconomic status of the students it served, to disparate incarceration rates for people of different races who commit similar crimes, the segregation that we see in the U.S. today is the result of anything but natural occurrences. Instead, segregation is the result of several centuries of the contrived notion of race and white supremacy being codified through policies, laws, religion, and ideology. It is, at best, arguable that this highly contrived state of division is the condition that human beings naturally tend towards. This transitions directly into the notion of colorblindness. In the same breath that some students would speak about the comfort they felt when they were amongst their own, they would claim that they are colorblind and therefore not racist and not living in a racist country. The implications of this line of thinking, however, is not the eradication of the racist systems that keep the country divided, but the perpetuation of them. Particularly for people designated as white, colorblindness allows people to continue to benefit positively from the manner in which they are racialized, meaning that they reap the benefits of privilege, and can tacitly perpetuate socioeconomic systems of oppression through their inherently privileged positions in society, and self-segregate in such a way where they consolidate most of the country's wealth and political power. All the while that this happens, colorblindness provides them with the facade of not being active participants in racism or even being opponents of it, while truly not doing anything to address their dominant socio-political positions, thus allowing for racism to persist in an insidious fashion. And that insidiousness is precisely what McIntosh points to in her essay about white privilege, which she calls an elusive and fugitive subject. Because McIntosh is designated as white, she is afforded privileges that simply allow for her to be rewarded the benefit of the doubt and the presumption of being an individual rather than part of a monolith. In this way, whether she is seeking out a job, pursuing an education, or doing any other number of things that any person in the United States must do to survive, McIntosh is generally afforded the best-case scenario, sometimes in spite of her gender. However, McIntosh sees immense irony in this. Her white privilege is invisible. It is presumed to be a part of human nature and just advantages that she has earned, when in reality, her privilege was afforded to her through centuries of systematized disenfranchisement of non-white people. So, one can say that colorblindness not only prevents people from actively opposing systems of racial inequality, but it also allows for white supremacist ideologies to persist. This brings me to my parting question for you. Given both the contrived origins of whiteness as a race and the contrived notion of white supremacy, and whiteness as the norm, what steps can be taken to make whiteness visible in a way that allows people to scrutinize it? Thank you.